Hi, everyone. I'm Ray Chang on behalf of Hong Kong Business Association, Northern California. It's our pleasure to welcome all of you today from City Hall to the Boardroom, the voice of Asian Americans. Today, we're looking at two areas where decisions got made and visibility really matters, political leadership and corporate boardroom. And these are the places where policy is shaped, budgets are set, and role models are created. And yet, Asian Americans are still are often visible in the data, but invisible in the decision making. So that's why we're so excited to have two incredible leaders with us. Lily May, former mayor of Fremont, California for 16 years, and John Qual, a board member and also former general counsel at Varian Medical. So they have each navigated spaces where there no clear playbook for Asian Americans. And today we got to learn from their journeys, their challenges, and their candor. Now, every great conversation needs a great moderator, and we are very fortunate to have one. It's my honor to introduce our moderator, Buck G, Northern California regional chair of the Committee of 100. And Buck's career and impact could easily fill the entire hour, but I'm trying to keep this to Asian parent bragging length. Buck retired from Cisco Systems in 2008, where he served as a vice president and general manager of the data center business unit. And before then, he was a president and CEO of Endemio Systems, which Cisco acquired. So basically, he's a guy making sure the internet didn't melt. So he's also a co-author some of the most influential research on Asian glass ceilings, titled like Hidden in Plain Sight and the Illusion of Asian Success. These reports are thoughtful, data-driven, and diplomatically phrased way of saying, hey, we checked, we measured, and we have questions. So academically, Buck has degrees from Stanford, twice, double E and master in double E and MBA from Harvard. And because of every good bio needs also a fun fact, Buck plays golf once a week and usually breaks 100. Now, for those who don't golf, breaking 100 is solid. For those who of you who do golf, you know that means the Buck has spent years breaking through both handicaps and glass ceilings. And he has patience for long games and on the course and also in the boardroom. So before I hand it over to Buck, I want to quickly acknowledge, Hong Kong Business Association of Northern California community. And we build bridges between Hong Kong and Northern California economically, culturally, and academically, and to help professionals and companies navigate opportunities in Greater China and the region. And today's discussion is part of that mission, preparing our community not just to do business across borders, but to lead across systems. Thank you again for spending your time with us. We hope you'll engage actively, ask questions, share your perspectives, and continue this conversation beyond today. So with that, now please join me in welcoming our moderator, Mr. Buck G. Hey, Buck.
Thank you. Thanks, Ray. So I hope to have a fun and honest discussion today with Lily and John. But before we get started, let's look at some data. Because I'm sorry, I'm a nerd. I'm a data guy, and the question is, you can't have honest discussion until you understand what you're talking about. So here's a question for the audience. Here's a poll that we're going to pull up in a second. But in California, the 100 largest cities, how many Asian or API mayors are there? And ABC, 18, 12, or 6? What do you think? Choose, and we'll spend a couple minutes while you're answering. And actually, Lily, we're one of them, no longer. When were you mayor in Fremont, and when did you leave?
I was elected in 2016, and I just left this passed end of the 2024. So January, we switched to the new mayor, end of December. So
Were you the first Asian mayor for Fremont?
I was the first Asian mayor for our city of Fremont, but sadly for the United States, for big cities, I'm actually the third Asian woman to lead a big city in US history.
And how big is Fremont population-wise?
Fremont's just shy of a quarter of a million, about 235,
That's a lot. So congratulations on
235,000
being the mayor.
people. No.
Uh, do Yanni, do we have the results yet, or do we need to wait a couple minutes?
So Buck, I do see we have more than 65% of participants answer the poll, and I will end the poll
That sounds
in
good. Yeah.
5 seconds.
Great.
Mhm.
Sounds good. So I'm curious what people think. What do you think they chose, Lily?
I think that the people have a un unanticipated. They probably picked six, but it's a little bit more than that, I think. But
Let's
I know
see.
my peers. That's why.
Let's see.
What did people choose?
What did people choose?
You're right.
Oh, people chose.
You're right. Okay. So most of you think it's six. Wait, pull that up again. Sorry. Um, a few people picked 18. Probably you did. Okay. And it would 18 would have been basically the same percentage as in population. Okay, so so close that and let's see the answer. And the answer is
B.
12.
Yes.
E, 12. Can next slide? And there is another slide. Oh yeah. So actually, yeah, it's 12 of the 100. Here are that. Here are the cities where there are Asian American mayors. Some in the Bay Area, some in Southern California. I would have thought actually, Lily, there'd be more in Southern California, especially in the suburbs of LA. There's a ton of Asian Americans there.
Well, I think what happens also in many cities, and that makes it a challenge for us, is many of them rotate. So they only have 1 year as a term versus myself. That's one of the distinctions is that myself and a handful of, especially women now, have been directly elected versus rotating. So rotating is just your council appoints you on a schedule usually,
Okay.
or by your peers.
But the point here is if actually you look at we're 6%, 16% of the population, and we're underrepresented by 25%. So we have a ways to go in terms of more Asian American mayors. Let's look at business. Put up the next slide. Now okay. Okay, here's a second question. In the Bay Area, San Jose, San Francisco, metropolitan area, 45% of the individual contributors, professional individual contributors, white collar basically, are Asian Americans. A lot in tech, mostly in tech. I'm curious, and this is a chart of the population over time, but basically it's 45% now of the white collar professionals are Asian. What share of executives are Asian? So let's put that poll up. Same question. In business, we know in politics, we're 25% underrepresented. How are we doing in business? I mean, there's a lot more of us there, so we ought to do a lot better, right? So what? We have 16, 26, 36. Of 45%, we're underrepresented by some a number, but how much are we underrepresented by? That's a question. John, you were one of the few executives. John was a general counsel at Varian, right, John?
Yes, yeah. The senior vice president, general counsel at
Sorry, senior vice president. I don't
Yeah.
know. Okay. What would be your guess, by the way? I'm curious.
Well, I think having been there, okay, my guess obviously, well, not obviously, but my guess is 16%.
16%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How are we doing in the poll, Yanni?
Yes, we have more than 75% attendees already answered the poll. Do you want me to share the results?
Yeah, that'd be great. They seem more anxious on this one. Maybe they're more. Let's see. Okay, I think they all agree with you. 60%. All right. So everybody, and Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the numbers. Okay. Close the poll. Thank you. Next slide. We'll eventually get to a talking part. The answer is 26%. I think the interesting thing here is that over time, it hasn't got much better. In fact, this slide, and this is something that I do for Ascend. And John, you've done a lot of things for Ascend. Ascend is a professional organization of Asian American professionals nationally in the Bay Area. I was on the board, and John does work for Ascend now. But if you compare where Asian Americans are versus whites, we're 42% underrepresented as executives. That is to say, if you look at the percent of executives versus number of professionals, it ought to be, if they're equal, they should be 1, and we're below 1. The ratio is 0.48, so we're 42% underrepresented as executives, and that's the problem. So and we can move forward here in the next slide, but we're done with the slide. But with regard to business and civic issues and in corporate issues, the numbers are similar. We're underrepresented by a lot. So let's move to discussion then, and I want to start with Lily. Really 2 questions with Lily. One is why and what did you do differently? I mean, you're one of the exceptions. Why you?
I don't
And
know.
what's
I
going
think
on? Maybe what's going on?
I think part of it, I'll say that, yesterday I was actually on a call and a webinar listening to Marshall Gans, who was one of my instructors when I went to the Harvard Bloomberg Mayors Institute. And it was really interesting because he's expressed people to tell their stories. And every year they bring a cohort of mayors. And I will tell you that I definitely noticed that when I went to my mayor's cohort. Out of all the mayors that were coming from the United States, 30, there were only 18 from the United States and 12 from rest around the world, but there was only 1 Asian. That was myself. And I've had that experience when I went to the Harvard Institute of Politics. I had that experience when I went to Yale Mayor's College. Growing up, being born in Chicago and grew up in Pennsylvania, I knew what it's like because literally in my school, you would have said the Chinese girl, and I was the only one. And so I realized how important representation was. And it also made me feel like it's important to make your voice heard. During that time period, it was the end of war. It was still towards the end of the Vietnam War. And people blamed Asians for all the issues that they had. And it was sad for me as a child to be targeted at times. In my family, I've been shoved in lockers. I had my mailbox blown up, my window shot out as a kid.
As a kid?
Yes, as a kid. And so those are experiences that I faced that really, I think, shaped me to be more determined to at least stand up for myself. It wasn't with bullets or with BB guns, but it blew out my front window, my bay window of my house. But, those types of
Oh, wow.
experiences really made me think it's important to have representation. So years later, even as a parent and as a school board member, I have to tell you, that's why I think it's important to have representation. I only saw 1 Asian elected when I was a kid, and that was SB Wu. And my graduation speaker really inspired me. It's the first Asian woman I'd ever seen in leadership, and that was Secretary Chow. And she was at that time going from um, the Peace Corps to United Way to be an executive. And so for me, I was like, wow, I've never seen an Asian woman be in leadership. And I followed her career to see where she went next. But as a parent and as a community member, I think often in my city where we have almost 50% immigrants, a lot of the narrative before is all Asians care about is making money, getting ahead. They don't focus on the community. And I had a really great role model in my mom that she was an immigrant, but she wanted to volunteer. She didn't speak the language well, but she was a classroom representative. So even for myself as a working parent, and I got to see it's a fun fact I will tell some people right now. I got to see Buck and John overlap a little bit in my career, my past. I was with 3Com Corporation many years ago. And so as a young woman, every time I got pregnant, I got promoted at that time. And so as a parent working, I saw the impacts of, ethnicity and also representation in the schools. So as a parent, I wanted to make sure that I ran. And there's a lot of racism still that's undercurrents. when I was going out for endorsements, there's another
Yeah.
school board member who I really value, IB Wu, as a friend.
Yeah.
But people said, you don't need to be there. There's 5, school board members, and you already one of you's there. And I don't know if I was being a little bit swarmy or smart when I answered back. I said, I didn't know I'd live in a crayon box and we can only have one yellow. But, it's important for us to have more than
Very
one
cute,
person.
very cute, Lily.
Well, I said that, just because we're both Chinese
Yeah.
women does
Yeah,
not
I know,
mean that
I
we're
know,
the same
I know.
woman.
Yeah, yeah.
So yes, but that type of journey and that willingness to work across different groups. Growing up in Chicago, it's predominantly Black. Same with going in Philadelphia, where I went to school. It's a very different population. And where I grew up in Pennsylvania, originally at Valley Forge, they had daughters of the American Revolution, cotillions. So I've been in many areas where I've been the minority. But here in the city of Fremont, we're really blessed to have incredible diversity. And as one of the largest Asian majority cities in the United States, I wanted to demonstrate that we needed to have a seat at the table. And for too often, I think people say that they represent us, but even when you ask for that fair representation, we've been asked to be a model minority and just to go with the flow. So I think that's where we need to fight back.
But I'll say to your point, you went to civics, but even when you go into business, and I'll move to John, even when you're in a business, right? And Asians are, as you saw the numbers in the Bay Area, they're 42%. They're more Asian professionals than white professionals. We're still not doing well. I mean, so John, you saw that at Varian. John was general counsel of Varian, as senior vice president.
Yeah. So my backstory is very similar to Lily's in that I grew up in Houston, in Texas, in the rural parts of Houston, outskirts, and
you have no drawl.
I lost it a long time ago. I still get it back when I go back to Houston. People say that it's very noticeable. But I was in elementary school, middle school. I was the only Asian in my school, and like Lily, faced a lot of discrimination, threats of violence. Got beat up a few times. I remember one time in high school after school. I was walking home and a group of kids came up and took a bat to my throat. And this was, back in like 1980.
Yeah,
I didn't think too much of it at that time.
Oh, wow.
Luckily, somebody else came along and told them to lay off me, and that happened work. But a year and a half later, Vincent Chin incident happened. And that was the guy in Detroit, the Chinese American, who got beat up and his head bashed in with a bat.
Yeah.
And it was after that I realized how close I could have been to being, a statistic like that. Anyway, long story short, like Lily, I grew up thinking that I needed to speak out. I needed to represent. And that was something that, when I went to college, I was, considering, the usual med school or grad school. But fortunately, a Asian American professor, one of the few in college at that time, who took me under his wing, said that, given what he knew about me and I was active on campus, he said that you should consider law school because he knew I wanted to try to make an impact. And so that's what I did. And in some ways, that now the rest is history. But more directly to your question, Buck, is that, I think that this is emblematic of the problem that we have, both whether it's in the public realm or in the private sector, is that we have numbers, in the individual contributor ranks, but, for various reasons, stereotypes, a lot of prejudice, a lot of old girls networks in some ways that are keeping us out of those executive ranks. For me, I think I got lucky in some ways. I found some people who were sponsors and who were mentors to me. from that were both white as well as minority that kind of helped mentor me a little bit. But these were people that were very generous with their time, and at the same time I was determined. What I frequently tell people today is that, well,
Yep.
Becoming a lawyer, if you want to be rich, becoming a lawyer isn't the profession you want to do that, and there's much better ways to do that. But it's a good way of making a change if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I know. My father said, he wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, and I didn't like to read, so I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer because that's what you have to do, and I didn't like blood, so I couldn't be a doctor, so I decided to do something else. But
by the way, and I think we talked about, we really mentioned this, but you, Buck, are one of the pioneers and trailblazers.
Yes, absolutely.
What you did at Cisco and what you are doing right now. So, we should give you the appropriate applause for that as well.
So I'll kind of get in a minute, but actually, for those, by the way, Lily, for those people, the kids, they've never heard of 3Com. 3Com was a company many years ago that actually was founded by the person who invented Ethernet, Bob Metcalf, and so
Yes.
and he got that to happen. It was really the first wave of networking, personal networking. But back to the topic at hand, John, I want to go make this point. What the data says is basically that very little has changed for us in terms of likelihood of getting top. They're actually more at the top now, and so people point to that. But in terms of that's because they're more at the bottom. But in terms of the likelihood of being promoted to executive levels, Asian men and Asian women have been for the last 10 years and remain the least likely to be promoted. Okay, that's what the data says. But what that tells me, however, is the things we're doing haven't been working. And John, and so expecting us to do well and blah 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 isn't enough. John, and I want to get to John and something, Lily. What are we doing to change the system so something is changing? Because unless we do something, the data tells me it's the same. And you started to do something with the SEND and boards. You're going to talk about that for a second and what's done.
Yeah. So and this started back in, I think, 2020 or 2019. There was a bill in California called the Diverse Boards Bill. Okay. And in there, it was originally only focused on, it was a mandate, by the way, to put more minorities onto boards. But in the original version of this, it only focused on Latinos, the Latin community, and African Americans. And obviously, that's a worthy, those need representation, but as well, the Asian American community need representation, as well as the LGBTQ community need representation. So we had a grassroots operation that we got that bill expanded. Once the bill got signed into law, though, we looked around and saw that the other communities, whether it's LGBTQ, women, the Latino community, and African Americans, they all had vehicles for getting people prepared, create a pipeline to get into executive roles and board positions. The Asian American community did not have that. So we launched, I together with Ascend launched an initiative at that time. It was called 10 by 25, with the goal of getting 10% of the Fortune 1000 directors to be AAPI by the year 2025.
Yep. And
that is one of the concerted efforts that we have to try to increase our representation. And that initiative had three legs to it. One was creating the awareness, the pipeline. Two was education. How do you prepare somebody to be a board member? And three is the actual recruitment, putting people onto boards. And I have to say that we've had some moderate success. When we launched, we had 4% of the Fortune 1000 directors as API. As of 2024, that number increased to like 6.4%. So we've had some modest improvement. Obviously, not the 10% that we were shooting for, but that was obviously a moonshot type of goal. But these are type of efforts that we haven't had before that we need to have, is growing their awareness and making concerted efforts to do this. We had similar type of efforts, coming from legal background. We had similar type of effort started by the National Asian American Bar Association to get more general counsels onto Fortune 1000 boards. And that actually had been a very, very successful effort. And so that was part of what we emulated our 10 by 25 initiative on. And it's shown that if we can make a concerted effort like this, focus attention, and hold accountability, I think that does produce results.
So I want to get to Lily and the kinds of things that can be done on the civic side to address the issue. And one other comment is, I noticed there are no questions being asked. If you have questions, ask them now so we can address them later. But please, my suggestion is these are interesting topics, and I think both Lily and John would like to discuss what you want to hear.
Yes.
Okay. So please, use the question function and ask questions. Okay, Lily. So is something similar being done on the civic side?
Sure. So I have to tell you, it's been interesting. I've had a front seat at some of these changes. When I was elected school board member in 2008, there used to be a council of presidents, which is the Latino, Asian Americans, and other minority groups, such as the Black and also Native Americans, working together on the school board side. But they had a representative at large. And I thought on the board, that's not getting enough done. So we reconstituted what they call the Council of Presidents. So we had a coalition where we met regularly with the board of directors. But that also helped here in terms of APAMO, which is our PISMA, our Asian Pacific Islander School Board Members Association. So we did more networking and growth. I was surprised to learn as the president many years ago that 90% of the school board members in the United States that were Asian sat in California. The rest of the United States had 10%. And so I'm sitting there going, wow, that's pretty lonely. And so that meant also working with other states and other colleagues to make sure that when I'm at these conferences for a National League of Cities, that we had more representation and people also making that transition. One of the stereotypes, for example, in the city of Fremont, just like others, sometimes our school board members don't understand business. Though hopefully I remembered something from my days in my former corporate life. So when I made that transition to being a city council member, I also worked to change the composition. So Fremont, I'm the first school board member to ever become a council member. And I was pretty lonely. I was the only woman out of 4 guys when I first became mayor. And also we have a wall of council members on our city's history on that when you walk in. And there's actually a 35-year period with no women at all. And so seeing that change from being a woman that represented and people asking questions like, you're the only woman with 4 guys. What if nobody wants to listen to you? And I had to answer the question, well, if everyone has a mother, a daughter, a sister, a wife, I guess you can ask them. And I imagine you sometimes don't have a choice. But working on that type of platform also helped when it came to getting our council better representation, going out there, working with our youth. I mean, these things are things that we should be working on. And it is a challenge, I will tell you, having faced it firsthand. When I was a school board member, there was a discussion about having Milk Day. And at that time, it's Asian Heritage Month. It's the month of May. And I had said, what about Fred Korematsu? Because we have a heritage in our city of Japanese farm workers. And I was rejected for that, saying, that's not important. We need to have this date. And I said, well, how about a personal hero day? And again, it was rejected. And so I find it interesting, though, that we have to so often support other groups, which I think is critical. It's essential for us to be allies. But I think that because we've been so silent and quiet as a minority, sometimes people just think that, the counter isn't true. Because I also pointed out at that time, having grown up in the 80s, seeing Vincent Chen and seeing some firsthand, some of the things that are behind the scenes. I realized how important it is for us to make the advocacy. Even as recent as a couple years ago, we have added Juneteenth to the calendar in our city. And I asked about Lunar New Year. And at that time, some of the pushback is Lunar New Year is not a federal holiday or state holiday. Thankfully, it is now. But at that time, people pushed back also and saying, why do you need that?
State holiday, right?
Yeah, state holiday, yes. So, as a mayor, I mentioned earlier that I was the only mayor sometimes at these mayors conferences, I was honored and happy to be able to join their board for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. But when I was there, and they were going to the White House on different delegations, they had the Latino Mayors Alliance, the Black Mayors Alliance, and I kept thinking to myself, where's the Asian Mayors Alliance?
Right, exactly.
And as I mentioned, they said that you'd be pretty lonely because there's not many of you. But since we formed it 4 years ago, I'm really proud to say, especially here in California, I've been able to help support fellow women and men get elected in the cities. So that right now, standing in the United States, I think we have about 13 Asian mayors for big cities. But it's taken a real concerted effort to support one another. And one of the things that I also find as I'm stepping out as mayor, as I mentioned just in January, I found it interesting that when I helped other mayors get elected sometimes in other cities, there is some undercurrent still of racism. People say, you're stepping out of office, maybe you're making Lily May lights, or you're kind of spreading. I said I'm not a virus. I'm empowering, hopefully, and empowering hope, not a virus. But when other counterparts, whether it's Black or Latinas, help others get in, there's not quite that same type of feeling. My council right now is an unusual space. We've had majority women since I've been on there. It's the first time ever over the last couple of years. And then we also have majority Asian. We have our first, as you saw earlier, Mayor Salwan is our first Indian American, East Asian Indian to represent us. And we have 5 out of the 7 council members as Asian. And some people had given feedback like, oh, they're taking over the city. I go, no, we're not making Asian history. We're making American history.
Yeah.
And it represents the demographics and the population.
Exactly.
And just in terms of having a seat at the table, I know that they say if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. But I've told people that if you don't have a seat at the table, you need to reset it. And so while I'm no longer the mayor, I hope to be a CHO. And I joked with people, I'm not a CEO or a CFO. I'm a Chief Hope Officer, and hopefully making the difference that we need. And I think that that's important. That's why I'm working right now with a lot of our youth, whether it's those in school, elementary school, all the way up to university. Because if we don't build the pipeline today, we won't see the change that we need for tomorrow.
Go ahead.
Can I
John.
just pick up on something that Lily
absolutely
said, which I think is and what she's demonstrating, I think, is something that is amazing and something that that we all need to do. Okay, both from a public standpoint, but then also from a private standpoint. Lily used her platform as mayor in public office to help others. Okay, to extend the ladder down. And that's something that we need more of. Yes, we've seen in the private sector, I'll address the private sector right now, we've seen more Asian American executives, okay? Just in terms of the absolute number, percentages have stayed the same.
Right.
But for us to be able to really have hope in building up our numbers, okay, so that we're at parity, based upon what you define as parity there, but we need the Asian American executives that are in seats right now to mentor and to extend the ladder down to help others come up. Okay, it's something that's very interesting, and this is something that I've noticed, and I don't know, Lily, if you've seen this as well. Whereas the other communities, the African American communities and the Latino communities and women communities, they seem to be very, very open and not all reserved about ensuring that that people that look like them are from their communities come up the ladder. Okay, but one thing that I found is, for some reason, our own community, the AAPI community, seems to be a little more reticent about doing that for fear of being criticized, of being biased or something like that. And that's something that I think that we as a community, unfortunately, we got to own that, and we got to overcome that.
So then let me test you on that. Okay. So and really the question is, what's the biggest problem the community has in getting from here to there? Okay, that's the underlying question I have. And what's the best way what is a way to solve that? And the question to you is it lack of involvement by the by the leaders, the people who are there to help the community? Is that the problem? And is mentoring the solution? I mean, is that what I heard you say?
Well, I think, Buck, it's a multifaceted problem. Okay, there's no one silver bullet that will take care of it. I think it has to be addressed in multiple ways. One is that we have to overcome stereotypes and prejudice. We are not seen, Asian Americans are not seen as leaders. Okay.
That's fair. Right.
We are not, we're seen as good workers. We're worker bees. That's why we have so many at the individual contributor levels. But when it comes to promotions, when it comes to taking leadership roles, we aren't seen as people who can do that. Okay, right. We need to change that. Part of how you change that, though, is both in terms of external but also internal. Okay, there are behaviors that we culturally have learned that we need to overcome. Okay, things like speaking up more, being more out there, expressing our opinions, and being engaged. Okay.
I see Lily smiling.
Yeah.
It is so true.
Yeah.
I have a lot of the reverse stereotypes. Being an outspoken woman is not easy in the Asian culture.
Yeah, you're seen as a dragon lady, exactly. So you get the worst of both, exactly. Both swings, right? But yes. those are things that we as individuals, okay, need to overcome. Okay, by the same token, the people who have made it, and that's something that I try to do, is I try to not only just mentor people, younger professionals, and people who are coming up, but also create the space for them, help promote them, be sponsors, okay, and create the awareness, and be role models, saying that, look, kind of like for Lily, the fact that that she was an Asian American mayor in a large city. There's some Asian American girl out there saying that, hey, you know what? If Lily can do that, I can do that as well. And similarly, if John Kuo can be a C-suite officer in a large public company, that girl can do that as well. And so that's part of what we need to be doing.
Okay, and I'm jumping to the same question. It sounds like it looks like by your smile that you agreed with what John said. But from your perspective, same issue about getting a civic leadership. To me, that's really different.
I think it makes a big difference to have people be a role model. I mean, I've stepped away already for the past year, and I still encounter families and children and young ladies who say, you read to me at the story time. I saw you as a leader. And I've had students even come up to me, say, I'm going to be the president of the United States. And they come back to me, I'm the president of the school, of my student council. It makes a difference across many different areas. I mean, we are in a melting pot of ethnicities as well as religion and faith. And I'll give another example. For many years, I've been going to mosques, and I'm always very respectful. I wear a hijab or cover my head when I go in, and people say to me, what are we going to do? Because in the past, they have worship, for example, they separate men and women, and the mayor in the past always went to the front to get his award or to share his speech, and everything was passed to me. And I've been now in the community for so many years. Fremont this year will be my 33rd year living here. But when I became mayor, the question is like, what are we going to do? She's never been up to the front because they always pass everything to her. And when I went up to step in the front to speak as a mayor, and I have for the past 8, almost 10 years now, the first time I stepped down, I had a bunch of young women come up to me and asked to take a picture with me. And they said, we don't see people up there. And now that you've been up there, you've changed the rhetoric. Now it's normal. It's normalized that you are there as a woman. So other women will also be there. And so I think that's some of the little things that you have to do. I mean, to take the time to listen, to mentor, to focus. I mean, even as a city, I will tell you that there's the elected side of the house and there's the management side of the house. And one of the things that has been a challenge for me is I look at, I led some of the retreats for our leadership team. And when I look down the table over the years, I'm disappointed and sad to see that we don't have the same representation. It's similar to what I see if you see my Harvard picture or the other pictures where I'm like the one Asian there. And I don't think that should be the case. There is still such a stereotype of that you work hard, in civic side too, that you should keep your head down and just go with whatever everyone else is telling you to do. And when you change that rhetoric or push for that, you can get a lot of blowback because people want to be part of the, I guess you want to go up the flow with the river. But one of the Chinese legends that my grandfather and my grandmother told me when I was little is the carp that jumps over the bridge, right? The one that can swim upstream, that can make that jump over. And so I've tried very hard because of the challenges I've seen. I want a better future for my children and for the others that will
Right.
follow. And I
Right.
know that only happens when we stand on the shoulders of people who come before us, and that we also reach back to help those. So
So,
it's something
but
I'm
by the
very
way,
passionate about.
okay, so I agree with everything you said. There's one thing that I have to say because it just hadn't been said. And we had one question. I want to address that question that had to do with U.S. and China. But my only thing, so I agree with everything you said. The thing that I found missing, which I did at Cisco and continue to do, is that I'm a troublemaker, and what I mean by troublemaker is that
I,
is that um, this can't be solved by just addressing our community.
yes.
What I did at Cisco and what I always do is when I go into different companies, organizations, and point them to data and point to basically tell the white folks our problem because they're either unaware or ignore it or whatever, and provide solutions. So it's not just our problem; it is the corporate problem that there is this thing happening, and good business leaders understand the fact that there's a great deal of talent in the Asian American community that wants to be promoted, that wants to be developed, and they don't see that, they don't understand that because bluntly, we don't complain as a community.
No.
Okay. And I will tell you as a leader in a business, John, there's you got a boatload of things you got trying to fix, and if no one tells me there's a problem, I don't solve the problem. And that's fundamentally a problem that's always been my approach, John and Lily, is that I try to make noise so people pay attention to us. All right. Anyway, so
Yep.
there was a question that was there.
Yeah, I think it was
Um,
about the China, US, and what how that impacts, and I think that I can try to take a stab at that. And
yeah, please.
you know, I think that this adds to the stereotypes. Okay, if you look back at history of Asian Americans in the U.S., it vacillates between we're villainous, evil, um, you know, do no gooders, okay, or we are passive, docile, go with the flow type of people. And this whole tension between U.S. and China, unfortunately, I think it's kind of playing into those tropes, those stereotypes, in that Asian Americans are being cast as villains. One of the things that, and part of the reason why we need to get into these leadership roles is because representation, and the more of us that are out there seen as leaders and part of the community,
Yep.
it tears down this perpetual outsider veneer that we have. We're seen as a community, we're always seen as perpetual outsiders. Okay. And it makes us, unfortunately, easy scapegoats. Okay. When you have tensions like what's rising between US and China, all of a sudden you see rise in anti-Asian American violence. You see stuff like Chinese Asian scientists being probed by the FBI, CIA for spurious reasons. Okay, just because they are Chinese, just because they're Asian, no scientists from other countries faces that type of scrutiny. So unfortunately, I think that we're going to see more of that with this type of global geopolitical tension that we have. It's something that we have to overcome, unfortunately, both in terms of as a community, but also using the court systems and using our political power to correct this and push back against this.
So Lily, you were mayor during the China initiative, during the peak of the China initiative.
Well, I was going to say that I have unfortunately, but I've been fortunate to weather it, been the mayor through, I guess, a wartime mayor through COVID. And as one of the first to shut down our cities, actually prior to my county, having seen the experience of SARS virus in the past and knowing that it was Lunar New Year and many people are traveling between different countries, I had shut down and locked down the city. I will tell you that times it is a very pivotal moment for me in my mayorship, because I was getting hit from all different sides. People telling me that you're being unrealistic, that it's not going to come over to the United States. People saying that, probably a secret communist spy locking down the city, trying to destabilize the U.S. economies. During my mayorship, one of the challenges I faced, people don't realize, is that I don't have security detail. And so I've had death threats, rape threats. I've had people come to my home, set my lawn on fire. It's been quite a challenge at times. But when I saw this happening, I still felt it was important to call it out. So I made sure that, like with Dion Lim and I went on to talk about healthcare workers, some of the Filipinos, especially in nurses that we were talking to at that time, were being targeted just because of Asian hate, or some of the rhetoric when I ran for another campaign in a past, people were saying, maybe she's a secret communist spy. The movie Crazy Rich Asians, I was laughing that I was traveling in Asia at one point. Somebody said to me, "Do you own the Singapore?" And I was thinking to myself, yes, that's why I'm in your Uber right now. No, but these types of challenges are very ugly, and it's unfortunate. What I see that I really want to call out, if I had one wish that I could call on people, is that to raise our voices. I'm disappointed that when people were saying, she's probably doing secret backroom deals. We had, unfortunately, a city manager who had gotten into trouble, and they attributed it to me. They're like, maybe she's doing secret backroom deals. She's a spy. Maybe she's a communist, all these other crazy things. Maybe she's a crazy rich Asian, and not looking at the fact that we are immigrants that have been here for not just, my father came in the 60s and he had to go to Canada first because of the Chinese Exclusion Act and still some of the rhetoric and feelings. So that's why I almost was Canadian. My father moved to Chicago a month before I was born because he's doing his postdoctorate there. But even now, here in Fremont, I'm really proud. Just a few weeks ago, we had a showing talking about how we had people here from the 1850s building the Transcontinental Railroad, building the cities. And so much of what people depend on today is not a reflection of just, American history. It's U.S. history. I actually called out, and I don't know if it made the White House and them a little caught off guard, when we did this, the anniversary of the 150th for the Transcontinental Railroad. We had some discussions and we had some presentations for the Transportation Act at the White House. And I looked out on the picture and I said, I see all my fellow Latino mayors, Black mayors, white mayors. You know who's not there right now? An Asian mayor. And I represent the largest city with manufacturing in the United States. I have the most EV made, not just in California, not just in the United States, in all of Northern America. I'm also one of the cleanest clean tech mayors, the happiest city, the safest city. And yet sometimes when we had Good Morning America asking about Asian hate, they had the mayors of San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. But I'm like, you forgot the one Asian mayor who actually is Asian and facing the hate. So, I think that it's good sometimes to be a troublemaker, and I don't think that that's been something that has gone unnoticed. But I tell people that the virus that I feared most during the pandemic wasn't the Kung flu or the Wuhan virus, the term that they used, or the COVID virus. It was the virus of hate. And the fact that we as a people have been so used to, sometimes in the Asian community, being, so many people say, keep your heads down, just focus on yourself. Just keep your own family and your education safe, but to raise up and stand up. And that's one of the things that also is really hard to do. The fact that I was willing to stand on some of the issues. People have had asked me on another discussion, why didn't you take a knee? And it wasn't that I didn't want to take a knee at that time. It's the fact that, meanwhile, people are telling me that I should come down, lay down my badge, kneel and resign. And as the first woman there, and I just didn't think that was a moment that was kumbaya, that was going to allow me. And so I told people I stand with my community. I'm standing to be sure that my community is safe, but I'm not going to just cave because you want to give me pressure. I am pretty stubborn. When I did end up kneeling and praying for the community, I kneeled on hot asphalt for 20 minutes and actually gave myself second-degree burns because I made a commitment. I said I was going to kneel and stand in solidarity. When I did it, even at the peril of my own health. But it's what I believe in, and it's the type of fortitude that I hope to inspire and see in others. Because if nobody raises up their voice, we won't be able to be heard.
I think that's a great way to end that. And so thank you. And by the way, I would have voted for you, Lily, if I were with you. But John, yeah,
Thank you.
last words, because we're at our time end here. So John.
Well, so we focused on the boardroom or corporate, and we also focused in the public realm in political offices. But what I want to encourage people to do is get involved at all levels. Participating in nonprofit boards, participating in SPCA, participating in your own school board.
Yes.
In different realms, you can show leadership and develop leadership. The more people see Asian Americans in different positions of leadership, not just corporate leadership, not just in office, but in different places of leadership.
Yep.
The more we become part of the fabric of the community and more normalized in their minds. And that, I think, is how we overcome a lot of this. So I want to encourage people to do that. I mean, one of the things that I did was I joined the alumni board of both my college as well as law school. When I looked, the law school, for example, was 25% Asian, but yet on the alumni board there was no Asians at all. Mm-hmm. Okay, I felt I had to stand up and participate and represent, because the administration needs to know that the alumni, the Asian American alumni, want to have a voice. They matter. That we can't be ignored.
Great advice. So I think we're out of time. Ray, would like to jump in and say the last words, or Yanni?
Yes, thank you so much, panelists and Bob, for putting this so informative and very inspiring in this 1 hour webinar. So I do notice that we have another question, but do you think we can also answer that too? It's from Wei.
I didn't see a question come up, so
I didn't either.
Wei, do you want to just ask the question live?
Sure.
The other question I saw had to do with China.
No, I think
yeah.
There's a question. Which single habit shifted the needle most? Which single habit shifted the needle most for you when moving a contentious policy on board decision? So we can tie that, a little bit, just from your experience. Where do you see, hey, if there's one single habit that would move the needle when it comes to very contentious policy or any board decision, or even something really recently about DEI and dropping DEI topic, from the 10K and Q, stuff like that. So just want to see any off the cuff, the comment, the response to this.
Sure. So I think the single thing that helps is to build allyship and to be able to tell stories. One thing that, as I said yesterday in my takeaway, I didn't mention is that when I went to the Harvard class, every year they pick someone, unbeknownst to them. We share our stories before we go in a written application. And Marshall Gans picks one person to tell their personal story. And when I was there, I didn't realize I was the person he picked. He kept asking me, "Why are you here? Why are you here? What do you want to make a difference?" And it's that ability to tell your story and raise your voice. And that translates when you're making a difficult decision. I had some discussions about homelessness and trying to get that passed. We had over 3,000 speakers at 3 different community centers meetings, and we had the night of the vote over 500 speakers. At one point, I had someone try to smash a window too. And when I was having that conversation, it's being able to tell the story. And that's where we, as elected and non-electeds, make that difference. We can humanize. I mean, the data that Buck provides is wonderful, and it gives a real sharp contrast. But until you can hear the stories behind the people and why it's so critical, I think that's where we make it a difference. That's my success in getting funding from federal and state. When I take my Congress members or legislators out and I tell them to walk with me, not that I'm sending you an application that you can read, but you're going to see it with me firsthand. Every time we've done a point in time count in our city's history, I've literally been out there walking the homeless encampments for 6 hours. I start in the very beginning with all the volunteers, and I'm there till the very end. And I think that type of commitment to whatever you're doing, whether it's a parent, as a school board member, as a commissioner, as anything that allows for visibility. It shows people that we're not going to be just complaining about something. Rather than complaining about something, we're taking action. We're learning by doing. We're making a difference that way.
No, well said. Well said. Anything else?
Well, let me answer that from a corporate standpoint as well, because I think I very much agree with Lily in terms of, for me, one of the skill sets that I found most valuable that I developed, is building relationships.
Right.
Okay. A lot of people think that, hey, if you do good work and keep your head down, you'll succeed. Okay. That only takes you so far. The skill set that I found most valuable for me in terms of advancing within the corporation beyond mid-management was building relationships across the company, not just within the legal vertical, but across sales, marketing, finance, service, all the way across. Okay. And that was the skill set that really helped me advance, because you know what? I was able to very effectively take care of problems. I was very effectively be able to bring issues to the forefront by amassing allies, by understanding what the different sides of issues are, because I had built relationships with all these people already. And we were able to very effectively take care of issues. And that reflected very well on me, because then they saw that, hey, John is able to take care of issues, but more than that, he's able to lead on issues. He's able to garner a coalition of people within the company to do things effectively. And that's part of what got me advancing within the corporation.
Just quickly, I want to echo what John says. I have a blunt way of saying it, but basically, you want to be sure in corporate it's a lot easier than in civic, and I envy Lily for her ability to get things done when people don't agree. In corporate, you're all aligned with the top line, bottom line. So it's a lot easier in corporate. In particular, in a corporate, what you do is, as you say, you build relationships. I say you build friends. The way I always looked at it is you do favors. You do favors for people, and they do favors for you. You look at things You're doing things a little out of the ordinary, in general, right? You're asking, say, just a little bit more here, or legal to look at this or something for you. So you're always doing favors, and when you do favors for people, people do favors for you. And that's the way things work in corporate, is that you're all aligned on top line and bottom line, John. So it's a lot easier for us than it is for Lily.
Yeah.
No, thank you all. No, and we have a few minutes over time. And thank you again, Buck, for steering such a thoughtful and engaging conversation. And also a big thank you to John and Lily for sharing your thoughts, your candor, and more importantly, the real world leadership lessons. And today's reminded us that representation is not just showing up, it's about speaking up and